Well, welcome again, everyone, to Read by Forth's latest Lunch and Learn. My name is Alex Steffler. I'm Read by Forth's Data and Learning Manager. We're excited to be joined today by staff from First Book. They'll be discussing their recent report, The Impact of a Diverse Classroom Library. And as always, after their presentation, we will have some time for discussion and questions. You should feel free to put questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. You can also take yourself off of mute later after the presentation to pose questions directly. Either way works. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it to Jules Appleton to get us started.
All right, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to dive right into it. If it looks like the wrong thing is on my screen, I'm just going to say someone yell for me, but otherwise I'm going to assume we're good to go. So thank you all for joining today. As mentioned, my name is Jules Appleton, and I'm Director of Research and Insights at First Book. And today I'm going to be walking you through the findings from First Book's Diverse Books Impact Study. This is a study where we examined the impact of adding diverse books to the libraries of underserved classrooms across the United States. So after I've shared these findings, my teammate Elena is going to hop on and tell you a bit about First Book and how this study is really just one small part of the work we do towards our mission of ensuring access to quality education for all children. So we really hope at the end of this that you take away some inspiring insights about the power of diverse books and a few tips on how becoming a First Book member can help you acquire more diverse books for the kids you serve and beyond. All right, so First Book's Diverse Books Impact Study was a roughly 6-month longitudinal study, and it examined how educators build and curate diverse classroom libraries and how those diverse classroom libraries impact students and teachers. And this was First Book's first longitudinal intervention. Oops, sorry, went forward a slide. This was First Book's first longitudinal intervention-based study, which really just means that data collection took place over time, and we were tracking the impact of a specific action, that action being the infusion of diverse books into a classroom. So while First Book serves all types of educators, we did focus this study on classroom-based teachers specifically for research purposes, but we plan to include samples of program leaders who work outside of the classroom space in future study iterations. So we really hope this is just the beginning of First Book producing some much needed true impact data for the field on the topic of diverse books. And I will talk a little bit more about the need for this data in a few slides. So with that, let's dive in and talk about why access to books that represent diverse characters and cultures is important for both students and teachers, how First Book's research is helping us understand that impact, and what that research is telling us. So I'm going to review the key findings with you all up front to just give you an idea of the main takeaways from this study so you can keep these findings in mind as we go through the detailed data. They'll sort of help you absorb more of the details once you have the main findings top of mind. So what we learned from this study is students' reading scores increased after educators added diverse books to their classroom libraries. We saw that bilingual and LGBTQ+ titles drove the largest reading gains. And beyond just reading scores improving, reading engagement also increased through this study. So students spent more time reading after educators added diverse books to their classroom libraries. We also saw that allowing students to choose which books they want to read positively affects outcomes, and a majority of students choose to read diverse books that serve as mirrors where they can see themselves reflected in the characters and storylines. All right, so those are our main findings. And now let's set the scene. Why did First Book go out to conduct this study? What was the purpose of this study? So the information on this slide may not be new or shocking information to this group here, but I do think it's important for context as we set up the study. So problem number one is the lack of access to books in low-income communities. So First Book has always known that access to books for kids in low-income communities is limited. A study by early literacy researcher Susan Newman found that in some of the lowest income neighborhoods, there's often only one book for every 295 children. And this is compared to more affluent communities where there's typically one book for every 5 children. So access to any books at all is often the #1 priority for educators. But if you want to get kids excited about reading, teachers need more than just any book. So what kind of books do educators need? This brings us to problem number 2, the lack of diversity in children's books. Existing research has taught us all that diverse characters and cultures are often not represented in children's books, even though 53% of school-age children are children of color. A 2022 review of nearly 3,500 children's titles revealed that the diversity represented in children's books does not reflect the diversity of readers. One of our first ever First Book Network surveys taught us that 90% of our members said their students would be more enthusiastic readers if they had access to books with characters, stories, and images that reflect their lives. So in response to findings like these, along with ongoing research and really endless anecdotal feedback from educators about the importance of diverse books, First Book has been intentionally curating titles with diverse characters and cultures for the First Book Marketplace for years. So in 2022 alone, First Book members purchased over 2.5 million diverse books through us. So we know these books are in high demand, but how do we know if these books are actually making a difference in kids' lives, and what difference are they making? So data on the lack of and need for diverse children's books is pretty well documented, but data on the impact of actually having access to those diverse books is not. And that is how the Diverse Books Impact Study was born. So this study was designed with 3 objectives in mind. Objective 1, to better understand the impact of diverse classroom libraries from the educator perspective. Objective 2, to better understand the impact of diverse classroom libraries with respect to student outcomes. And Objective 3, to add to the limited existing research on this topic. And I want to take a moment to speak specifically to objective number 3 real quickly. As I mentioned before, there is existing research that links diverse books to student choice and reading engagement, and some research that demonstrates that access to diverse books in the classroom and at home results in greater self-confidence and empathy and cultural awareness for children. However, this research was often conducted within a single classroom or with a very controlled sample size. First Book wants to start filling this gap in existing research for the education sector by leveraging the voices of our network of 575,000 educators and their experiences. So we hope that this study is just the first step to First Book becoming a go-to source for providing quality data on the impact of diverse books for the field. All right, here's an overview of the study methodology. I am not going to spend a lot of time here. I know this is not the prettiest slide, but just know that this study was conducted in 2 phases. Phase 1 was our large-scale quantitative survey. So we really just started by emailing our entire network, those 575,000 educators who all serve low-income populations, to see if there was interest. We said to participate, you would be required to place fully funded $250 order of diverse books through First Book, and then answer a series of brief surveys in the months following. And we had nearly 4,000 educators fill out the screener to participate. So clearly there was exceptional interest to participate in this study. In the end, we had 437 classroom-based educators complete the entirety of the study. Phase 2 involved qualitative interviews. So we capped all of that quantitative data off with some qualitative interviews. Nearly all of our participants raised their hand to participate in one. And in the end, we conducted 15 informal semi-structured interviews. So with that, now we're really going to dive in and look at what changes occurred when educators added $250 worth of diverse books to their classrooms. So first things first, we wanted to get a feel for how diverse educators' existing libraries were at the start of the study. So while 99% of our participants said that they felt having a diverse classroom library is important, and 75% reported serving predominantly children of color, still, on average, participants reported that only 28% of their existing libraries would be considered diverse. So educators know a diverse classroom library is important, but they don't necessarily have the resources to make their libraries as diverse and representative of the children they serve as they would like to. Next, we wanted to establish some baseline measurements to help us understand how students interact with their teachers' current classroom libraries. So through a 5-point agreement scale, we learned that students are generally engaged in reading, but most excited to read books that reflect who they are. So 78% of our educators said their students were interested and enthusiastic about reading at the start of the study, with 70% indicating that their students more often choose books that serve as mirrors, compared to 41% who say their students more often choose books that serve as windows. And in the gold box to the right, you can see that we use the Bishop definition of windows and mirrors, just so you know. So windows are books that allow children to see into the lives of those who are different from them. And mirrors are books that allow children to see themselves and their culture reflected back at them. All right, now let's dig into some of the impact findings. The very first promising key finding from the study was that just 5 months after the infusion of diverse books into the classroom, the average amount of classroom reading time increased by 4 hours per week. So this means that the addition of approximately 48 books through the study, which was the average number of books educators were able to purchase, added 4 hours of collective reading each week to the classroom. And beyond just reading engagement, we saw reading scores also improve for our participants. At each bi-monthly survey time point, educators reported gains in reading assessment scores, and you can see that represented in this chart to the right here. Now, of course, this would be expected in any classroom, right? That scores improve regardless of the infusion of new books. As time goes on, scores are going to improve either way. What's interesting is that the amount scores improved for our participants was far higher than the nationally expected yearly gains. So the NCES, the National Center for Education Statistics, reports an average gain of 6 points in reading scores for a given year. Our participants saw gains of 9 points by the end of the study, so 3 points higher than the national average. Even more exciting, these gains were greatest for the lowest scoring students. So those who stood to improve the most did. Next, we learned that 2 specific types of diverse titles drive even greater engagement and growth than others. So bilingual books had a significant impact on reading scores. For every 1 additional bilingual book that participants added to their libraries, their students' reading assessment scores improved by 7 points on average. Additionally, for every 1 LGBTQ+ book that educators added to their libraries, student scores improved by 4.5 points on average. And this was regardless of classroom makeup. So we did not ask our educators to report on whether any of their students were part of the LGBTQ community, for example. We saw these gains regardless. You can see one educator here says about the power of bilingual books. My students love graphic novels. They get them excited about reading. And what do they love even more? Graphic novels in Spanish. And then another educator says about the power of LGBTQ books. I have all boys, so they won't say they want an LGBTQ book because that's dangerous socially, but I'll buy an LGBTQ book and I'll see it get checked out. So this really just helps us understand that there is a notable difference between giving students just any new book and giving them books that reflect their lived experiences. Another main finding to come from this study is about the importance of student choice when it comes to turning students into readers. And this finding emerged through open-ended feedback about the importance of diverse books and through the interviews that we conducted with participants. So you can see some of the really powerful quotes from educators here that just talk about the power of student choice when it comes to turning students into readers. One educator says, many students will not openly express what interests them. Allowing them to freely and privately pick reading materials allows them to learn more about things that interest them. Another educator says, when students see that they are in a book, they want to read more. And when they read, their knowledge base grows and they find they enjoy learning and finding out about others that have been on their journey. The more books there are that reflect diversity, the more chances I have of students finding the book that changes their futures. Another educator says, I make choice reading a priority in my classroom every day. Even apathetic students are more engaged in reading than they otherwise would be because they get to pick what they want to read. And then this final educator says, to me, it's extremely important to have a diverse classroom library so that all my students can see themselves represented in the books directly available to them in our room, and to have books that are windows to the world for them. I believe that choice in reading leads to engagement and greater success overall in reading and in school. All right, lastly, before I wrap up on the data, let's revisit that first baseline measurement chart that I reviewed at the top of the presentation. So you'll recall that at the start of the study, we learned that educators' students were relatively engaged and enthusiastic about reading already, specifically reading books that reflect who they are. The original survey results are represented here in blue. By the end of the study, we saw the needle move on every single measurement listed, and you can see that represented in the dark red bars here. So students' interest and engagement with reading increased slightly by 5 percentage points. Students became more engaged in other types of learning in the classroom. We saw the percentage of educators who reported that their students gravitate towards books as mirrors increased by 10%. And the percentage of educators who reported their students gravitating towards books as windows increased by an impressive 18%. So the addition of diverse books to the classroom library resulted in greater student engagement in reading and learning in general, improved representation of students, and increased curiosity among students to explore the stories of characters who are different from them. So as you can see, we learned a lot and we saw some really promising results because of this work. $250 worth of diverse books can make a huge difference for student outcomes. And educators are determined to build the diverse libraries that it takes to strengthen their students' love of reading. So we're clearly very excited and eager to keep talking about these studies and the results with key groups in the education and children's book space like you all, but we're also starting to look towards future research. So First Book is looking to continue this work. We want to repeat the Diverse Books Impact Study for a full school year. We faced several study limitations that we would really like to address in future study phases to really just further validate and expand upon all these findings that you saw today. Additionally, as I mentioned before, future study phases would be part of an ongoing effort to add some much needed data on the impact of diverse books to the field, data that simply does not exist at the scale that First Book can execute right now. And then lastly, First Book Research and Insights continues to continually conduct research among both formal and informal educators and practitioners in low-income communities to really identify the challenges they face, help them overcome those challenges where we can, and share their stories far and wide to raise awareness and support for educators and the children they serve. So all the feedback we receive from First Book members informs everything we do, from the books we buy, to the programs we support, to the free resources we offer. So that's a wrap on the data piece. You can find the full report for the Diverse Books Impact Study on firstbook.org. You can feel free to reach out with any questions, but for now, I'm going to turn it over to Elena to tell you a bit more about First Book and how joining the First Book Network might help you further the work you do with kids.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jules. I'm going to go ahead and just introduce myself quickly. My name is Elena Smith. I am a nonprofit partnership manager here at First Book. I recognize a few faces here from our work with Read by Force, so very excited to be here today. And I'll be sharing a little bit more information about First Book generally to kind of contextualize this work and show how we can be a really great resource for you all as you hopefully populate your classroom libraries and other libraries with diverse books. So First Book was founded about 32 years ago and is dedicated to ensuring that all children, regardless of background or zip code, can succeed by removing barriers to equitable education. We do this through a few different mechanisms, but primarily through our First Book Marketplace, which I'll dive into a little bit more in a few slides. In our 30+ years of operating, we've supported 5 million children annually through our work. Our First Book network is comprised of 575,000 educators, and that's both formal and informal educators, as Jules mentioned. So classroom teachers and librarians, but also folks who run community programs, people working in shelters and churches, all sorts of different avenues to make sure that the kids who need support are receiving that support. And in the 30+ years that we've been working, we've provided 225 million books and resources to various communities all around the country. So we're really excited to have a First Book presence in all 50 states, as well as Canada, and we are currently working on growing internationally, which is really exciting. So First Book has had quite an impact in the time that we've been operating. Next slide, please. In order to become a First Book member, this is a totally free process to do so. Membership will allow you to access our First Book Marketplace, the discounted books that I'll review shortly, as well as a bunch of other resources that are free or low cost. In order to become a member, there is some eligibility criteria. We want to ensure that the folks that we are providing these resources to at, again, free or low cost, are serving children who come from low-income communities. We have various agreements with publishers in place to kind of spell out that that's who we're providing these resources to. So just want to make sure that our network meets those criteria. There is quite a few different kind of buckets that you can fall under in order to be eligible for membership. So all Title I and Title I eligible schools. So if you're a teacher or librarian or any other school support worker, whatever else in those schools, you are eligible to be a member. Early childhood programs, including Head Start, literacy organizations, after-school programs, shelters, clinics, churches, libraries, museums, all of those can count for eligibility for First Book. Again, as long as at least 70% of the children that you're serving come from low-income families. There is here a little drop-down menu. This is what you would see when you actually go through our registration process. These are all of the different eligibility categories that you'll be able to access as long as you meet that threshold. Next slide, please. So in order to become a First Book member, you can navigate to our website. You can use the link that's here on the screen. Also, if you go to fbmarketplace.org, you will also see a big Become a Member button. That will take you to this page here. And then about halfway down the page, you'll see this blue button that you can click to become a member now. Again, this is a totally free process. It usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete, and will include a few questions in terms of who you are and where you serve, and then some information about the children that you serve as well. I'll go through a little bit more information that in the next slides. Next slide, please. I do like to spend just a quick minute reviewing the actual registration form itself. It is lengthier than I think some people anticipate when they first enter the registration process, but again, should only take about 5 to 10 minutes as you go through it. So this first page on the registration form will ask pretty basic contact information, where you work, your organization's address. One thing I do want to flag is this % low income children served at the top of the second column. That's something that not everybody knows off the top of their head. But again, if you are in one of those eligibility criteria, or you meet those eligibility criteria for the type of organization that you work at, then at least 70% is our threshold. So as long as you meet that or above, then you should be good to go. Next slide, please. This third slide, after you do the basic information and you set up accounts, username and password, is where it gets a little bit more in depth for some of the information that we're collecting. I do want to emphasize here that most of these fields can be estimations. We don't need to know the exact number of children that you are serving, but we would like to know roughly how many. So this will go through a little bit more information about you and your role, what school district you're a part of, if you're a part of one, a little bit about the programs that you run that serve the children in need. If there are any affiliations that you have, if you're an AFT member, or part of the Read by Fourth network, various kinds of things like that, you can list those affiliations here. And then it goes through the age and languages and some other information for the actual children that you serve. Again, most of these can be estimations, so don't spend too much time worrying about the details, but this really helps us to get a snapshot of who you are and the work that you do. This also helps us to kind of filter your profile so that you have access. We'll receive emails and other information on specific promo code opportunities or other great deals like that that are a little bit more targeted for the specific work that you're doing. So if you say that you work with ages 0 to 3, then you might receive more emails with information about early childhood programming and opportunities. So just kind of a point to keep in mind as you're filling this out. That's why we ask for it. Next slide, please. Once you have completed the free, relatively quick registration process to become a First Book member, you can then log on to the First Book Marketplace at this link here to begin shopping. Everything on our marketplace is typically between about 50 to 90% off of marketplace value, which is pretty tremendous when you're trying to stock up on books and other materials for your classrooms or other activities. Our homepage here on the marketplace is constantly changing depending on the time of year and different things that are going on. This is a screenshot I took about 2 days ago from our marketplace. So it's currently highlighting Black stories, Black characters, Black authors for Black History Month. As you continue to scroll down the page, you'll see more information about other kind of major categories. And then this bar at the top, blue bar, is where you will navigate to find all of the different resources that are available to you as a First Book member now. Next slide, please. I'm going to spend just a few minutes going through what some of these specific categories will take you to. The First Book Marketplace has, first and foremost, a lot of really, really amazing books, very diverse books, but there are also a handful of other resources that I want to draw your attention to. So first, I'll highlight our diversity and inclusion section. If you go to the book drop-down menu, the very first button is diversity inclusion. This will take you to our Stories for All project. This is a page that is specifically dedicated to highlighting various groups of ethnic and racial backgrounds, LGBTQ characters and stories, different religious backgrounds, Native and Indigenous stories, disability, anything like that. So if you're looking for very specific categories to help represent the youth that you serve, or to help serve as windows or sliding doors for the youth that you serve, this is the section to be able to navigate to. You'll see a number of purple boxes like this as you go through that will highlight each kind of specific category, so you can find easily what you're looking for. And then each of those specific categories have dozens, sometimes hundreds of specific titles relating to that category that you're looking at. So this is probably the best place to look if you're immediately interested in the diversity and inclusion aspect. We make it very easy for you to navigate and to find what you're looking for. I will also note quickly on the book front that we are constantly updating our title selection. We have a full title selection team that is constantly reading and reviewing titles to see what is the best, newest in diversity and inclusion. So if you check 1 week, you might want to check back another 2 or 3 weeks out, and there will likely be new titles for you to look through as well. In addition to books, we also have free resources available for educators. This is called our Accelerator portion of First Book. The free resources tab is a tab on its own, and that's where you'll find all of these. Or you can see in these kind of gray boxes here, this is a screenshot from that free resources page, all of the various categories that are available for you to be able to explore the resources that we have. I'm consistently impressed with the resources that we're able to provide. I think that they are highly variable and really cover a lot of areas that are important in working with different types of youth. So everything from promoting STEM and STEAM activities, diversity and inclusion, supporting grief and emotional wellness, trauma, having literacy-rich classrooms, even having conversations about racial justice or climate change. There are a lot of really fantastic resources here. I do want to note that all of these resources are based on the work that our Research and Insights team and Jules has worked on. So we do frequent studies and surveys with our educators, the 575 people that are a part of our First Book network. And then we use that information that we find to then translate into immediately available very rich resources that can be applied in the classroom or in programming when you're working with youth. So we try to make that as streamlined as possible so that whenever we find that information, we can then turn it around and make it available and accessible for teachers. Because I know not everybody has time to read a full research report, but hopefully these resources can be digestible and implementable through the Accelerator. So definitely check out the resources there. There's a lot of really great activities and other things that you'll find. Next slide, please. 2 other areas that I want to highlight on the marketplace. The first is the book bank. This is the area of our marketplace that houses donated inventory. These are definitely the best deals that you'll find on the website. Often these are cartons of books, so really great for if you're looking for a classroom set of something, or if you want to distribute like for a book club or other kind of activity like that. These are a little bit less curated for diversity and inclusion since they are donated inventory. So we have a little bit less say in terms of that curation. But there's still a lot of really wonderful resources, very kind of brand new, highly requested types of books. There's a few that I've highlighted on this slide here that, again, I screenshotted just a day or two ago. So unless somebody has snatched them up, they are available. But everything from Rick Riordan, who I know is having a real big comeback with the Percy Jackson show right now, Goodnight Racism, information on COVID-19, really accessible resources for kids and at great prices. All you are paying when you go through the book bank is the price of shipping and handling for those cartons of books. So often you can get 20, 30, 40, 50 books for, $10 to $20, depending on what that shipping fee is. So I definitely recommend check out the resources that are available there. There's also a way to sign up to receive text messages whenever there's a new drop on the book bank. When I talk to educators, that's always one of their favorite functions of our marketplace because there's a lot of really great deals that you can find there, but they do go quickly. So it's great to check in on there frequently. And finally, the last section that I'll highlight are our hygiene products and school supplies. You'll find this under the supplies tab on the big blue bar on our marketplace. We just recently brought back basic needs hygiene items, which we're really excited about as a partner with a Delaware partnership. These items span everything from very basic individual items like toothbrushes, toothpaste, shave gel, shampoo, conditioner, all sorts of things like that. You can buy those kind of individual items in carton quantities at a reduced cost. We also have packaged hygiene kits that are available both for elementary age children and for middle school, high school age children. The main difference between those is that the teen hygiene kits tend to include things like shave gel and menstrual products, where the elementary school products don't. So you can also buy cartons of those prepackaged hygiene kits. There's a menstrual supply kit as well. And then if you're really looking to supply a lot of children, we also have these available by the pallets. Pallets come available again in elementary type items versus middle and high school type items. So there's a lot of really great ways to get bulk hygiene items for your programming to be able to hand out to students who might need them. In that same section, we also have school supplies. So everything from markers, notebook, scissors, sometimes we get art supplies, backpacks, all sorts of really important kind of everyday school supplies that you might need for your classroom at, again, a deeper discount than you would likely find them elsewhere and often sold in bulk. So we're really proud to be able to have such a diverse array of resources that are available to our members. Our books are, what we talk about the most, and one thing that we're really excited about, particularly in terms of the diversity that we're able to offer. But there's also all of these other really exciting resources that you're able to offer when you become a First Book member. So highly encourage you all to sign up if you're not already. Next slide, please. The last thing that I want to touch in on today is just sharing a upcoming grant opportunity that we have to be able to provide funding to access these, well, in particular, the diverse books on our website. So I think this ties in really well to everything that Jules covered in terms of the importance of having these diverse titles in your classrooms and in your programs. So if you are interested in receiving funding to continue doing that really amazing work that I know you're already working hard on, this opportunity will be coming up in July. This is part of a 3-year program. We're entering year 3 this summer for the Philly Book Wish Grant Awards. This is a project that we work very closely with Read by Fourth on, as well as the Philly Book Bank and William Penn Foundation. We provide grants to the First Book Marketplace, and in particular to access diverse titles. Grant amounts in $500, $1,000, $2,000, and $5,000. Total between the first 2 years of this program, we've awarded almost 150 organizations, over $200,000 total, which is really exciting. There have been thousands and thousands of books that have gotten into the hands of children in need directly because of this program. So we're really excited to be able to offer it for this 3rd upcoming year. The dates that I want to highlight is that the application will be opening in July and will be closing in mid-August. If you're familiar with this program, that is a little bit earlier than it has been in previous years. So I do want to note that, but we are also extending that application window since it's over summer break, and we know that everyone will be busy traveling and doing whatever else. So please keep an eye on that website. We're happy to follow up with folks to provide more information once those applications do go live. We will also be hosting in the week or two leading up to the applications opening a couple informational webinars that will go more in depth on the program itself, everything that you can access, how to use your funding, kind of answering all of those basic questions. So I think I saw Alex just post the link to that webpage in the chat. Thank you so much. Feel free to visit that page. We will be updating it in the next month or two with more information on how to access funding in round 3. Next slide. And I think that's all for me. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to Jules and I today. We're always really excited to be able to share information on the Diverse Book Study, but also just information on how to become a First Book member. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you both so much. I did see a couple of questions from a little bit ago while Jules was presenting, so maybe we could start with those. Jill Smith, I saw that you had a question about how you noted that reading time increased and you were wondering if comprehension also increased. So if you'd like to add anything to that, you can feel free to take yourself off of mute, as can anyone. But Jules, I'll go ahead and maybe we can start there.
Yep. That's a great question. And I have a feeling my answer to a lot of these questions might be coming in future study phases. So no, we did not look at reading comprehension specifically for this pilot study, but it is definitely on our list for future phases. So we hope to kick off the next study in August of this year, and that'll be on the list.
Great. Looking forward to that next phase for sure. Maybe we can schedule you all to do another lunch and learn when that's all wrapped up in the future.
Absolutely.
I know we had a couple of questions from our home libraries group that my colleague Abby Thaker, who wasn't able to be here due to a scheduling conflict today, but she was wondering. So she noted that the study focuses on the impact of more diverse classroom libraries and was wondering to what extent it's fair to assume that access to diverse school libraries would have similar impacts, especially here in Philadelphia, where a lot of schools don't have libraries at all or don't have certified staff in their libraries.
Yeah. That's one of the things I'm seeing come in more and more often through research is educators saying my classroom library is the school library, or we don't have a school library anymore. My classroom is the only place that children can access books. So I'm going to start by again saying, yes, this pilot phase focused on classroom libraries, addressing book environments in other spaces like public libraries and school libraries is on our list for future study phases. So we hope to learn more in that space. But my other answer to this question is the beautiful thing about this study is that when I think it is applicable to other settings beyond the classroom, because we did not instruct the educators to use these diverse books that they got in any specific way. We just gifted them to them, had them put them in their classroom and use them however they saw fit. So we know that this means it is not just diverse books into classroom libraries where educators are working with the specific diverse books and the students and like engaging in an actual lesson topic. It is the power of putting these diverse books into an environment for children, creating a literacy-rich environment for children that includes diverse representation. So the short answer is yes, I do believe these findings are helpful to prove a point beyond just classroom libraries, and hopefully we will just be drilling that point home more and more in future study phases.
That's great. Thank you. Jill, I see you have another question. Did you run into any objections to the books that you made available?
We did not. We allowed our educators to pick whatever books that they wanted from specifically our Stories for All section, our selection of diverse titles. And I don't know if this could have just been self-selection bias, but the teachers that chose to participate in this study probably already work in schools and classrooms where these books are allowed and okay. But yeah, we did not see a lot of pushback, and we did ask about it. We asked educators if they had any problems with the specific titles that were offered, or if their administration might have any pushback with the titles that they purchased for this study. And we were really delighted to see that it wasn't a problem.
We had another question from our from Read by Fourth Home Libraries group. So right now, a lot of our partners who provide access to books through a variety of formats have been thinking about how to measure the impact of that work. So Jules, I'm curious if you have any advice on potential measures or outcomes that these partners should be thinking about as as it relates to book distribution.
Yeah, measurement on diverse books specifically, or just access to any books?
I think diverse books specifically.
I think the answer might honestly be somewhat the same. So, the three that we look at most often are reading scores. Are they improving? Is reading time spent reading improving? And are students, is their interest in participating in the classroom in general improving, right? Are they showing interest in other topics that they want to learn about? That's a great measurement. The thing that I think is most important, I think there are other factors that should be considered in measuring impact, and one of those is general student attitude. That's one that we didn't explore with this study, but I would like to, is does the demeanor of students change when they have access to content that they feel represented in, when they have books that they want to read, when they suddenly want to come to class more because it feels like a learning environment meant for them. So I think it's important to start looking at the attitudes of students and whether those change once they have access to learning materials that really resonate with them. And then another really simple one is we actually sometimes look at attendance, because if students are reading more and they're more engaged in class, they're coming to school more often. So attendance is also a really interesting and great measure to use.
And for Elena, I noticed that there were some questions in the chat that I believe you answered during your portion of the presentation, but just wanted to flag that if anyone has questions about becoming a First Book member that didn't get answered, please feel free to unmute or throw it back in the chat if you feel like it didn't get addressed earlier. Jill, I see you have another question for, I believe, for Jules. In keeping with attitudes, do students begin to ask for more books? So I'm guessing, I think what you mean by that is like after getting a few new books, does their interest kind of keep up, and do they start asking for more?
And I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to say that is a great question for us to ask in future study phases. So yeah, is it leading to more reading, picking out more books of the same topic or of different topics? We saw the increase in reading time, obviously, but do we see an increase in choosing books and reading more going forward? So I think that's a great question. I don't have an answer for you directly from this study, but I think that's a great question.
I do just want to quickly address, I was kind of scanning questions in the chat. I think I got to a number of them, but there were a couple questions about how to get books specifically for kids in Philadelphia. So I do want to flag, of course, we highly encourage you to become a First Book member and to use the resources that are available there. The Philly Book Wish program that I mentioned at the end of the presentation is also specifically for Philadelphia organizations and educators. So I really do encourage that you utilize that. I also just want to quickly shout out one of our partners who works on the Philly Book Wish project with us, the Philly Book Bank. This is located at MLK High School. I was just there last week. It's phenomenal. They have so many books entirely for free for you to be able to go and take. They operate similarly on a educator choice kind of model. So I also just want to shout them out because they're doing really tremendous work at providing free access to books in Philadelphia.